Hey guys, and welcome back to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel for another interview. I'm Connor. Joining me today is actor Brandon McKnight. We'll be chatting all about Brandon's role as Chester P Runk, or Chuck if you're Loper Garcia, on CW's The Flash, as well as Brandon's background and wider career. If you enjoyed this interview or any of the others on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. So, welcome, Brandon, and thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for having me, man.
For sure. And obviously, some people might not know that you're from Canada, and which obviously has a rich legacy of comedic and dramatic acting talent. And did anyone or anything in particular inspire you down the path you've taken?
Most of my inspirations were actually weren't Canadian, but
Okay.
most of the people that it was mainly like the big people that we all love in Hollywood and stuff like that, the
Mm,
Denzels and the Forest Whitakers, and but the main people that really inspired me were just the people that were coming up around me around the same time. You know, there's a couple guys like Emmanuel Kabongo, Lyric Bent,
mm.
Clay Bennett, we can see on Falcon and the Winter Soldier now. Like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
guys are the guys that really they're like a generation above me, and those are guys that are really paving the way, especially for like black actors coming out of Canada. Didn't see a lot of well-known black actors, and then now we got Stephon James, Shamir Anderson. So it's watching
Mm,
those guys do what they're doing and coming up that made it seem possible. I was inspired by the Denzels and all those guys, but the guys that made
yeah.
it seem possible and made it be like, oh no, I can do this and I can shoot for the stars, and they're paving this way. They're opening up all these doors. It was mainly those guys.
For sure. And I
Mhm.
suppose, obviously, jumping ahead quite a bit in time from that point, you're obviously playing Chester P. Runk on The Flash. And I suppose, it's kind of common knowledge that these kind of comic book projects are a bit secretive when people are auditioning. So did you know, from the start that who you're auditioning to play, or are they a bit more
No,
kind of loose with
no, not
time
at
with it?
all.
Yeah.
Everything about the character was the same, but the difference was his name. Um,
Okay.
in the audition, his name was Zeke, not Chester. So
Okay.
there was no way for me to know up until we were in talks and negotiations of me actually doing it that the character was based off of something from the comic books. I thought it was just,
Mm,
for my personal knowledge, I just thought it was um, I thought it was just a random character that they were bringing in. I knew that
yeah.
the character was going to be recurring,
Mm,
possibility of a series reg, um, but it's very loose possibility.
yeah.
And yeah. So I didn't really know much about anything until like after I got it, and then they were like, okay, so this is who the character actually is. This is
Mm.
where he comes from. This is what he does, and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether they would have like told you this themselves. I seem to remember
No.
interviews with like some of your now co-workers saying that
Mm,
they knew, like, for example, straight away like Cisco Ramon, so he would have looked up and saw, oh, hang on, who's Vibe, and then kind of known that might be in his future kind of thing. But
yeah.
you wouldn't have had that prospect for you, like you literally no idea what you were going into.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, okay, that's really
I
interesting for
didn't even
sure.
know like I didn't even know the storyline or anything like that until I got the first episode. I was like, oh, this guy, the whole black hole thing and all that stuff. It was
Mm,
like I didn't know anything about any of that. The only thing that I had in my first audition was, first of all, his name is Zeke,
yeah.
big super nerd, Twitch like streaming stuff, all that kind of stuff, high energy, and that he loved aliens. And
Mm,
the monologue that I do in episode 601 where I'm streaming. That was
yeah.
my audition. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, just kind of thinking, like, Chester was one of the first characters brought in under Eric Wallace. He became the
Mhm.
showrunner in the season that you debuted. And I suppose,
Yeah.
was there any kind of pressure and, kind of like bringing in Eric's reign, so to speak, over the show?
Mhm.
And like, how instrumental was he in crafting Chester and his presence?
Oh, very much so. He gave me a lot of stuff that I, to this day, playing Chester, I still think about.
Mm,
He one thing that he told me early on is that Chester is the smartest guy in every room. He just doesn't know
right.
it. Most empathetic person in every room. He just doesn't know it. He thinks faster than he can speak. you know, and that he used the description a dog seeing a squirrel, where it's like
Okay.
he's paying attention to this, but then something over here will happen. He'll be like, oh yeah, but that, and then something over here, oh yeah. So that bouncing around because his thoughts are just moving so quickly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was very instrumental in setting the groundwork for what Chester was. And then the writers at the time, and this was pre-COVID, so the writers were there and they would always tell me,
Mm.
listen, you can do whatever you want. Like if you think these, you can change some of the lines if you need to. Like let's figure out like who this guy is, and we love what you're doing. So just kind of play, and that's what I've been doing. Even to this day, I still
Yeah.
get a lot of freedom to kind of just do what Chester does.
And I think especially considering who was in Team Flash when you joined, that it's a very different energy to bring to the show. I think it
Mm-hmm.
needed that kind of different direction to take it in at the time for sure.
Mm. He definitely adds a little bit of sugar.
Mm. Yeah, and actually, just kind of thinking back, because I've watched the show since it started, and I know that a
Mm.
lot of the other people who kind of came in the same way you did as like a new member of the team, some of
Yeah.
them had like connections, they knew someone already, but Chester
Hmm.
didn't. So, like,
Yeah.
how differently do you think you would have approached playing him if like he had been Barry's friend coming in or someone's friend?
I feel like him warming up to the team and him feeling more comfortable faster,
Mm,
because even now, like he's still trying to find his place, and
yeah.
that's kind of just who Chester is. He's always been the oddball, always been the
Mm,
outcast in a way. Um, so being part of this team now, he's still trying to figure himself out. He's gaining confidence every day, but I feel like that process would have been a lot faster for him if he already knew someone from the team.
mm,
And you can go into like the different kinds of story arcs that could come out of that, where
yeah.
maybe him having some sort of familiarity with Barry earlier on, or with Cisco early on, or with anybody earlier
Yeah.
on, and then realizing that they're part of this big team. Maybe that could have done something. Is a million different things that could have been done, but it definitely would have been different for sure.
Yeah, and obviously you were mentioning earlier how, well, I mean, you came in as like a recurring character, recurring cast member, became a regular later, but like how long into your like time as a recurring guest star were you given any kind of indication that you might be staying longer term?
Eric told me early on that he wanted to make Chester like a part of the team.
Mm,
Um, but like there was no concrete anything up until maybe like a month before it happened. You know what I
yeah,
mean? A month before we actually started talking about it. So I've said this before too, where like I kind of felt like I knew that the possibility of a series reg was there,
yeah,
but I didn't know when or how, or if it was even actually gonna. I just knew it was a possibility. So I
yeah,
kind of took it as, especially because I got this role without a screen test, without anything like that. I just sent a tape, and 3 weeks later found out. I was like, okay, so my real audition is what I do with this character for these episodes that I'm here in season 6. I was supposed to
mm,
be in 5, ended up being only in 3 because COVID happened.
yeah,
And those 3 episodes I saw as like, this is my time to audition for a series reg part on this show. So that's the
yeah.
way I was kind of looking at the whole thing.
And like considering how pivotal Chester's been in season 7 so far, it's difficult to imagine him not being there for some of the moments where he stepped up for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's good to hear.
Yeah, and actually, I guess that kind of segues into my next question because he was very much the center of episode 6, the one with the
Mhm.
90s. I think that's the
Yeah.
right episode number. And
Yep.
obviously, it kind of showed a more emotional side of Chester. I mean, obviously, you were saying he's a very like extroverted, full of energy kind of
Hmm.
person, kind of
Yeah.
character. So I suppose, like, as the actor who's playing the role, like, how was, in terms of what you learned about Chester in the episode, how was that informed your portrayal going forward, knowing what happened in his past?
The biggest challenge in that was just bringing Chester down, because he's such a big ball of energy and so
Yeah.
erratic and, like you said, extroverted. He's just always dialed to 11.
Mm,
So bringing him uh, down to a ground level where he's still who he is, and you still
mm,
recognize him as Chester in the way he speaks and the way he does everything that he does, but making it believable that this guy's actually having a real moment that's affecting him very deeply, like the deepest of deep. And so that was the main challenge with that. And that scene was the scene between him and his father was difficult, just because
Yeah.
bringing him down to the ground level, but also not so far down to the ground level that he makes it obvious that there's more going on than what he has to portray. Because
Yeah.
you can't sit there and be crying about his dad. This guy would be like, "Who's this man in my garage
Mm.
crying?" You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
having
yeah.
to still be covert, but still feel what he felt, and still be Chester and believable Chester,
Mm.
were the main challenges with that. And it was a blessing to have the actor that played my father as well, because he was great and an amazing person to work with.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the main challenges with that scene. And I like how it came out.
Yeah, for sure. And it's actually just kind of occurred to me while we were talking just there how they almost kind of played the moment from like, the viewer's perspective in the same way that Chester experienced it. It wasn't advertised as like Chester's big backstory episode. You saw his reaction, and then
Hmm.
he didn't know his dad was going to be there in that moment, and
Yeah,
it kind of hit the same way. It only just occurred to me there, but if it
yeah,
was intentional, that's very clever.
yeah. Definitely was. We definitely had a lot of conversations, me and the director Jeff Bird, about how to what the arc would be in terms of like how Chester's going through what he's going through. And we made a lot of decisions just completely based off of like how, even the arc of like him going from being in 1998, and the first time he realizes, oh man, this is the day my pops dies or my dad dies
Yeah,
tomorrow,
yeah.
when Cisco reads the newspaper. From that
Mm,
arc, from because that's the point where he realizes what this trip might be, all
yeah,
the way to the point in which he goes back to Cisco and talks about how cool his dad is and stuff like that. We just talked about that entire arc and how we wanted to portray, and we did it a bunch of different ways. But the way that he ended up editing it is the way that we initially talked about it. So, yeah,
yeah. And I think for sure as well, I might be misremembering. I think you said previously that you were like familiar or a fan of the show before you joined.
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yeah.
So I suppose like from that perspective, like when you knew that you were going to be in it, were there any characters like knowing who you were playing that you were excited to interact with this role?
Everybody,
Mm,
everybody, man, everybody. I was mostly looking forward to like working with Grant, obviously, because he plays the Flash.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
I was also very like excited to work with Candace and very excited to work with Carl. Everybody, really, very excited to
Mm,
work with Danielle. Me and Kayla came into the show at the same time,
yeah, yeah.
and we had never really interacted. So getting to do that as well was like amazing. So it was all of those things.
For sure. And obviously, you mentioned, I mean, the show is called The Flash and Grant Gustin plays that character. So,
Mhm.
in terms of a sense of being a new person coming in, was getting his approval important to you among the cast? Does that make sense?
Um, I wouldn't say approval,
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah,
but you definitely want to. My biggest fears coming into the show, which is also something that I had to like get rid of very early on too, was just fitting into the puzzle.
mm,
Here's this show that's not a lot of shows see 6 seasons at the time that I was having these thoughts. Not a lot of
yeah,
shows see 6 seasons. Not a lot of shows have a fan base like this.
mm,
So you go into this well-oiled machine that's been through a couple showrunners before, and everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows how the show works. Everybody knows has already built the relationships. And now, not only am I coming in as a new character to this team, I'm coming in as a new actor to
yeah,
this show, to this team. Um, and I just wanted to make sure that I fit and I didn't disrupt anything so much so that I just didn't want to be a disruption, really.
mm,
And I wanted to find my place and find where I molded without changing too much and find where I fit, while also bringing myself to what it is. And that was the biggest challenge. And I remember the first day, I remember I did that monologue I was talking about in 601. I
yeah,
did that. I think it was like my second or third day shooting. At that time, I'd only met Candace and Danny Nicolette, and
right,
um, and I met Grant, I think, once, just in passing, and everybody was so nice and so generous. And then I did my monologue. I think it was my third day on set, and then the day after, or maybe 2 days later, I had another day on set, and everybody had saw. I guess somebody showed everyone what I did,
Okay.
and everybody came and was like, "Oh my God, we loved what you did," and they were all so very kind and so very generous, and everybody kind of just met me with open arms. So molding into everything was pretty easy. So it wasn't so much looking for approval, but I
Yeah.
got the approval that I wasn't even really looking for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really nice.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you got the meaning of what I was going for, even if like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
approval, even if approval wasn't the word. I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
even I would agree that wasn't necessarily, you know. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you
but
got
that's
you got my gist. Yeah.
the only reason why I made that distinction, because it is very easy to go into any new job that you go into, especially in
Mm.
this industry, wanting approval, especially as an actor. All we want is approval. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So going into a show, I specifically told myself, don't go in there to make friends and be liked and blah blah blah. Go in there, do your job right, and don't be, don't rock the boat with no bullshit. You know what I mean?
Right. For sure.
Because it's very easy to want to get on set and be approved by everybody. That's
Yeah.
like the number one thing most people go in with. But then it affects how you do your job. It affects your work. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's the
think
only
that's
reason
it.
why I made that distinction. I completely
Yeah.
understand.
No. No, for sure. But I think that mindset could apply to a lot of workplaces. You know, a lot of the
One hundred
time,
percent.
yeah, you need to kind of keep it separate between, you know, you've got your friends and people you're friendly with at work, but them, you know,
Yeah,
won't necessarily be your actual friends. And
yeah.
you know, I mean, yeah, I get where you're going with that, like the whole idea of like professionalism, and you know, because
Mhm.
this could have been like the very brief time you saw these people,
Exactly,
and so
exactly.
yeah,
And a
sure.
lot of the times in my career up until this show, that's what it was. I was on set for maybe like a week. You know what I
Mm,
mean? At most. So you kind of, yeah, you just gotta lead with the professionalism first, and the friendships and the approval and all those things come after. If the approval and the wanting to be validated comes first, it'll affect your work, and you probably won't get there unless you're
yeah,
really lucky.
for sure. And actually, you mentioned that yourself and Kayla Compton came in at the same time as, and again, like
Hmm.
these new characters that Eric Wallace brought in. But
Yeah,
you know, Allegra knew Chester so little that she thought his name was Chuck, for
yeah,
instance. So like,
yeah,
and so, which kind of like would imply that you guys didn't get to work together a lot in season 6, but obviously there's more for you guys in season 7. But is there
yeah.
anyone else like that who you want to have more scenes with in the future?
I've gotten the chance. I've been very lucky to, you know, being the tech guy and the guy on the comms. You kind of
Mm,
get to interact with everyone and work with everyone. So I feel like I've been getting plenty of that, which I'm
mm,
very happy about because everybody's so talented and so great. Um, so I don't think there's any specific person that I want to work with more. I've worked with everybody, and I would like to just continue working with everybody.
yeah.
You know, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, just speaking as like a fan of the show, I've always wondered when you're on the comms, like, and obviously it kind of has the shots back and forth of like you there and you and the person that's, you know,
Mhm.
out and doing the action bit. But like, what are you hearing when you're at the desk and you're giving those instructions?
It's so funny. Those are like my least favorite scenes to shoot
All right, okay,
because you're basically just you're reacting to nothing. You know what I mean?
okay,
So you're
right,
just sitting at the computer and they're shooting and the cameras are doing what the cameras are doing,
mm,
and you have somebody just reading the lines to you and telling you the descriptions of what's going on. So
mm,
you don't actually see anything that's happening, and a lot of the
right,
times we'll have conversations like if it's me and let's say Candace and Kayla who are
right,
running comms that day or something like that, or me and Carlos running comms that day or something. The conversations between us will be like, "Oh my God, I just found out this news," and
mm,
then somebody's reading out, "Oh, and then the Flash gets hit by this and da da da." So
mm,
it's very tedious.
Yeah.
Um, you're acting to nothing. So
Mm.
they're kind of sort of my least favorite scenes to shoot, but extremely necessary. They're that what's it, the double-edged sword in
Yeah.
terms of this show as far as this stuff goes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose like just from an acting perspective, I because obviously things are always shot out of order. But if the
Mhm.
person who was like, say, if it was Grant as the Flash doing something, if he had told you what he had filmed and kind of said this is what is meant to have been happening, like, would that have been any help in terms of like,
Well,
imagining what you're reacting to, or would it not have, you know, done
I
anything?
mean, it wouldn't help as much as you
Right,
think it does, just because everything that's described in the script is pretty much there, so you already know what's going on. Having it
right,
read out to you kind of allows you to visualize it to some degree. But
yeah,
even if I saw what he was doing, it wouldn't really be, just because so many things are added in post
mm,
in terms of like the CGI and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the way we're doing it right now is probably the best way outside of
mm,
like showing us a rendered copy of what's going on.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, we've mentioned a few times you've become a series regular, and that's a full-time job. So, like, is there anything else in the pipeline that you have going on for you, or is it all centered on the Flash right now?
I'm writing a couple of my own things. I'm also finishing a short film that I shot a couple of years ago, and I'm at a place now where I can actually finish it. I'm also reading a few scripts, so there's a few things going on. Nothing I could really comment on yet because it's all
Yeah,
in the air. But yeah, yeah, there's a few things that I'm looking at for
yeah, well,
sure.
for sure. And best of luck with those. And hopefully, when you can talk more about it, then I'll be able to say, oh yeah, I heard brief things about those way back when.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I still get pretty decent freedom as
yeah,
far as Chester goes. I also feel like we've all kind of figured out who Chester is,
mm,
but they're also very like open to suggestions, and especially Eric. Eric is so ready to get on the phone and have a conversation about something that I feel doesn't feel right or something that I think could be added or anything like that.
yeah,
Um, so there's still a lot of freedom in terms of my character
yeah.
and the certain things that I'll say and do. So they're all very open for that stuff, which is amazing because it feels like a collaboration more than anything else.
Yeah, and obviously, Eric Wallace has a long connection to DC Comics outside of working on this show. So,
Hmm.
do you have any insight into Chunk? I think isn't it in DC
Yeah,
Comics?
Chunk. Yeah.
Did you get any insight at all into why uh, this character is?
Not so much. I just know that Eric really loves the character.
Hmm,
I know that
fair
Eric
enough.
really, really loves the character. And, I've been reading, I just started reading the comics again. And, I think his story arc is great. He kind of starts off as this person who seems like a villain, but really it's just he's fighting this duality of like, I have these abilities, I have these powers. I also have all these deep rooted insecurities and sadnesses but um, I have to do these terrible things in order to keep
Yeah,
myself alive. In order for my powers not to consume me, I have to consume other things. You know what I mean? So
mm,
it's that story arc and that idea that like your own abilities that make you super are also the things that are oppressing you in a way.
mm,
It's kind of like a fight within oneself, literally,
yeah,
that I find really, really interesting. And I think that's probably why Eric likes it too, especially
yeah,
because the character's black, and that idea and that story has so much to do with what it is to live in a black body, that whole internal struggle all the time versus like how the outside world perceives you, which is completely different from who you actually are, as we see with
yeah,
Chester in the comics, how he ends up being like one of the most important people on the planet in a way, getting rid of
mm,
waste and becomes one of the richest people and blah 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 blah. Early on
yeah,
he was seen as something completely different, and nobody actually took the time outside of Wally West to like really learn and figure out what's going on with this guy.
mm,
So that's it's all of what Chester represents is so accurate to what it is to be black today.
yeah,
So it's I think Eric was really smart to bring this character in
for sure.
and
And I
bring and
think,
it also just brings
yeah,
more awareness to the character and that
yeah.
storyline too.
Yeah, no, 'cause I think out of probably most other people, he's one of the most qualified people for his job right now. He's got
Mm.
such an extensive knowledge of DC Comics,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I mean, for people who might be listening to this who might not know, I believe like he's he's written for DC Comics. I know that much, and
Mm-hmm.
a long time fan. So I mean, it's probably his dream job in a sense, I'd
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
killing
for sure. I mean, and people were saying this, and when he took over, when season 6 came out, it's a very distinct, different tone. You can kind of tell it's a different person putting their mark on the show, and I think that's a
Yeah,
sign of a good writer, that it
true.
doesn't just feel like it's the same person as was doing it
Doing
before.
the thing.
Not that there's
Yeah,
anything wrong with it before, but the fact that it felt
it's just
different,
different. Yeah,
was good for sure.
yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and actually just kind of wondering, because a lot of the other characters on the show who've kind of started to go towards where they went in the comics, there's like elements that are there, but it's also different at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you know about where Chester goes in like the comics, do you think he's already gone too far in like a direction where he couldn't follow the same path, or do you think that where he goes could still be in his future on the show?
I think where he goes could still definitely be in the future in the show.
Mm,
I feel like I feel like if anything, if he were to go the same route as he does in the comic books, it would
mm,
almost be even more interesting because he's already been established as this
yeah.
fun-loving guy. So to see him go through that arc, and as an actor, I would absolutely love that too.
Mm,
Um, and to see him take this really dark turn and be kind of riddled with this internal turmoil of like, trying to keep himself afloat, but having to do these terrible things in order to do that, especially coming from this super loving, adorable, positive, loving,
mm,
fun loving, just loving guy, you
yeah.
know, and then having to go into this dark place. I think it would be wildly, wildly interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I
And
think especially, for fans of the
yeah,
comics to see that as
exactly,
well.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much space for it still. Yeah,
Mm. And also just kind of just a bit random. I know a few weeks ago you did a Instagram takeover of the
yeah,
show's Instagram account. I
yeah,
saw that, and you were kind of like going between yourself and, sorry to break the illusion, but you were playing Chester, but acting like
yeah,
he was a
yeah,
separate entity to yourself. But like,
yeah.
I mean, even back then, I didn't know back then I'd be speaking to you not long after it, but I was just wondering like how much, of like time and effort went into that, because just the whole thing of, I mean, it
Going
was
back
very,
and
very well
forth.
put together for sure. I didn't just
Thank
seem like
you.
something it didn't seem something you just thought of and said, oh, what the hell, I'll
I
just do it. It seemed
yeah.
very well executed.
Well, me and my manager have been talking about me doing one of the takeovers for a while. Well, not a
Mm,
while. It was probably like a couple weeks before episode 6 came out.
yeah,
And we knew it was a big episode for Chester, and we were like, if you're gonna do a takeover, this would be like a great time to do it.
mm,
So I had thought about it for like a couple weeks. I was like, oh, what if I did this thing where it was like this and that, and then Kayla and Danny did their takeover,
yeah,
and I loved what they did. The whole like send us your stuff and we'll repost it and like send us your. So I
mm,
was like, I want to implement that kind of idea, but I want to make it very Chester. So like, what would Chester do, kind of thing.
yeah,
And I honestly, everything that I did that day, there was the first thing I did was the dance with Grant.
mm,
And at that point, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just know that I
yeah,
wanted to get Chester having a good time with the castmates, but like as themselves, not as their characters, but
yeah,
Chester
yeah,
as Chester.
yeah,
I thought that'd be funny. So the first person I went to was Grant, and he was like, that's funny, let's do it. So then we did it. Little quick 10-15 second thing.
mm,
I shot like literally one shot him, one shot me, and then I was like, I have no idea how this is gonna edit together, but cool.
mm,
And then it wasn't until the day before the takeover that like I actually did all of this stuff, and I just did it during the lunch break. That
right.
entire first scene I just shot during. I didn't eat lunch that day. I just shot that thing, and
Yeah.
then between takes, I went with Kayla and I was like, Kayla, can you do this? And then Danny came in because she came in for a COVID test. And then
Oh.
she like had to do something with her hair. So I was like, hey, Danny, do you mind doing this thing? She was like, yeah, cool. So then I got hers. And then I messaged Victoria and she was like, oh, yeah, who plays Camilla? And she was like,
Yeah.
I'm super down for that. So, and then I just pieced it all together and luckily it all like kind of worked out. I think I was up until like maybe 4:30 that morning trying to piece it all together. And then, it all came together and worked out better than I thought it would.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
it was a
and
very
just
stressful 24 hours is what it
for
was.
sure. I mean, it definitely sounds like it. And like, just to say to anyone who might be listening to this, who might not have seen this takeover when it happened, I mean, kind of I guess the premise, to put it that way, is like the other cast members almost think that, well, they do think that, Chester is like you having a bit of a mental break. They're like,
Yeah.
like Brandon, like, this is real
Yeah.
life. That's a whole other thing. And it's a
Yeah.
very, I mean, obviously it's you playing Chester,
Paying
kind of
Chester,
playing a mentally
yeah.
version of you. So you
Yeah.
almost kind of, it's the layers. It was hilarious, and I don't know if you're still able to find it on the
Yeah.
CW Flash
If you go
account.
to
Definitely
the
go and look for it. Yeah,
yeah, if you go to their account, it's on their takeover highlights. So you'll
yeah,
be able to find it. You'll also be able to see Danny's and Kayla's there as well, because I loved what they did too.
yeah. No, I mean, I just thought that was hilarious and really
Thank you,
well
man.
done for sure. Yeah, that was great. And
Appreciate it.
obviously just kind of because the Flash and other shows would obviously like film ahead of what is going out on TV of like a week. So in terms of, and obviously I'm not asking like for spoilers, but if you could like in a couple of words kind of hint at because probably what about 6-7 episodes ahead of what's out, that right?
We're on the last episode right now. We're
Oh
shooting the
wow,
last
okay.
couple.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, that completely shatters anything I thought I knew about. Yeah, no, but yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, and again, I'm not asking you like for any spoilers or anything, but just kind of, I don't know, like just try and be as vague as you can.
What to expect?
Yeah, for sure.
Expect a lot of twists and turns.
Mm,
Expect a lot of surprises. Expect a lot of developments for all of the characters all the way
mm,
through. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. There's more I
yeah,
could say, but I'll leave it at that.
yeah,
Just expect a lot of twists and turns and a lot of you'll have no idea what's coming.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
mean, I won't name names, but there's people who are very famous online for like taking bits of information like that and dissecting every single word you just
Yeah,
said.
I
So
know.
guys, yeah, have fun with that, and yeah. I mean, because
Yeah.
I've got nothing.
There's already a lot of stuff that's out and people are kind of picking it apart and trying to figuring not really figuring. I've watched a bunch of videos and I've been like, I
Yeah,
see where you were going, but you're wrong. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So there's a lot of people doing their due diligence and really trying to figure out what's coming. But trust me, you'll have no idea. And if you have
yeah,
an idea, it's way more twisted and different from what you think.
yeah.
If
And
there's
I think
anybody out there doing their YouTube and their
yeah,
Googles,
yeah.
yeah.
Again, I mean, we don't have to name any names, but I think they know who they are. I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength with who we're referring to. But
Yeah.
yeah, and but I think also in general, the show's done a great job of like subverting where you think it's going to go. Because I never heard of anyone being like, oh yeah, I said this would happen after episode 2 came out, and then at the end of the season, it came true. I've never heard of that happening.
Yeah,
I think definitely
exactly.
they know how to take you off in a whole different direction for sure.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's on like a different tangent. Like obviously, it's been a challenging past few months, past year with the pandemic. You've mentioned that. But I suppose, like in a broad sense, like what do you hope to accomplish professionally or personally with the rest of 2021?
Well, like the short I mentioned before, hopefully I
Yeah.
get to well, not hopefully, I will be completing that this year for sure. As
Mm,
well as there's probably a couple other projects like I was mentioning that are kind of up in the air.
mm,
That I got to make some decisions on. So hopefully those pan out. And
yeah.
yeah, and then other than that, just keeping healthy, keeping safe, and
Mm,
keeping happy. Those are
right.
my
And
main goals.
yeah, and that was actually all the like pre-prepared questions I had. So I suppose maybe
Mm.
like to round this off, is there anything you'd want to say, I don't know, to fans of the show, or just, I mean, to finish this off?
Other than thank you for watching and keep watching, and we're gonna take you on a ride this season. And thanks for being a fan of the show. I love you
Mm,
as much as you love me, and you love the show.
mm. Oh, and once again, Brandon, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Take
Thank
care
you, man.
and stay safe.
Thank you so much. You too, brother.
Yeah.